Hey everyone, welcome to Hey That's Me, a commentary podcast. I'm Patrick Hotner.
I'm Patrick Hotner.
Interesting.
No, I'm Brian Lynch.
So on this podcast, we do commentaries on movies and TV shows with people who never got to do commentaries for them. So whether that's an actor, whether that's a director, whether that's, a costume designer, people who never got to talk about these movies at length, watching it, talking about it while they watch it.
The whole movie. We watch it along with them and talk to them about it.
It's like a DVD audio commentary.
Right.
You and I miss DVDs. We don't have them anymore, really. It's very hard to get new movies physically. Most of them are streaming only, or they just never come out. There's a lot of cool movies that have come out in the last 5 years that just don't really exist anywhere, and that's
no
terrible.
stores have Blu-rays or DVDs anymore.
Yeah, I went into Best Buy.
Nothing.
It's a real bummer.
Target has one display for Despicable Me 4, and that's the only Blu-ray you can buy.
That's
good for me.
Sure.
Good news.
Bad for everyone else who wants other movies.
Okay.
Let me finish. We have one rule, and it's that when the person sees themselves on screen or sees their credit on screen,
they have to say,
"Hey, that's me."
This is an excellent episode.
Am I
going to say that about everyone?
Yeah, because they're all very fun.
Yeah.
This one we did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem with the writers Dan Hernandez and Benji Samit.
Can I just say, Patrick, that I am the biggest fan of the Ninja Turtles in any form, and this is one of the best versions of them ever. So it's so exciting to get to ask them questions.
Can I also say, I'm not really a Turtles guy.
That's insane.
I know it's insane. I think I missed it by a few years. Not to date myself, but I missed it by 3 years probably. And this is the first movie where I was like, oh, I get it.
Right. So you're kind of a Raphael about the whole thing?
A little bit.
Right.
I'm a rude dude.
What are you? Are you? Well, you're cool though. At the same time,
thank you so much.
Would you say you're more of a preteen, dirty jean, kung fu kangaroo kind of guy?
I don't know what that means.
That's a ripoff of them from the late '80s, early '90s. Is that more your speed?
Yeah, that's a little more my style.
Adolescent, radioactive, black belt hamster kind of guy.
Okay, now we're talking.
Okay.
But this movie is really great. Came out during the strike, so I feel like a lot of people did not see it.
And they couldn't promote it.
Because no one could promote it.
But now they can talk about it.
Yes. Dan and Benji are guys who have worked on a lot of insanely cool things, a lot of IP, and I think that this episode is very interesting, just hearing how you navigate writing for IP and trying to put a new spin on things while keeping it still good for the fans.
We should probably explain to the layman what IP is.
Go for it.
It's a kind of beer. No, it's intellectual property. So it's anything that has pre-existed and you have to find a new spin on it. And that's what Dan and Benji are fantastic at doing.
They wrote Detective Pikachu. They wrote on The Tick. They wrote
Star Wars Lego Rebuild the Galaxy.
Yes,
which is
they
great.
wrote on The Addams Family 2.
The animated one.
The animated one.
Not the Values.
No.
They were 4 when that came out.
Yes. One Day at a Time? They ran on One Day at a Time?
They did, yeah. 1600 Pen. That's not IP.
Not IP.
I mean, I guess the president is pre-existing.
The White House is owned by someone. Is the
Right.
White House public domain?
Oh, sure. We could do a White House movie right now. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Hey, Mr. President, there's been an attack.
Cut the credits.
What do you think?
It's pretty good.
It's a cliffhanger. So this is Dan and Benji, Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. They taught me a lot. They really did. I love talking to other writers about their craft, and they're fantastic at it. So it was cool to talk to them.
It is streaming now on Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus for free, but you can Amazon.
You can get it other places.
Yeah. Get it on 4K. It's beautiful looking on 4K.
It is beautiful.
No commentary, though.
No, but the art style of this movie is fantastic.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of movies in the last, 5 years, whatever, saw Spider-Verse and said, I want to try that. And a lot of them did not do a good job.
Right.
And this one did do a good job.
100%. It has its own personality. It was inspired by Spider-Verse, you can tell, but it went in a different direction. That was really incredible.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
We're going to count down from 3 and you press play on go. 3, 2, 1, go. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Let's all introduce ourselves. I'm Patrick Hotner.
I'm Brian Lynch.
I'm Dan Hernandez.
And I'm Benji Samit.
Now, Dan and Benji, you guys are credited writers on this movie that we were watching today.
We are.
True.
Let's start at the beginning, though.
Yeah, I know gotcha questions.
Nickelodeon movies.
Nickelodeon movies. Let's start at the beginning. How did you guys meet? We're going all the way back.
Oh, we'll go all the way back?
All the way back.
Mm-hmm.
We met at Brown University.
Providence, Rhode Island.
Providence,
Wow.
Rhode Island.
Did you take classes together?
We both did theater.
Okay.
Yes.
You have something to say?
Well, I just want to say that this guy's name is Ramirez because I try to put a Latino person in every script that I write, even if it's in a tiny spot, especially when there are no Latino people in the show. So that's why this guy's Ramirez.
That's
is he
great.
Still named Ramirez?
I think he is.
Okay, great.
So there you go.
Who was the Latino in Pikachu?
The Latino Pikachu was originally the character that turned into, I forget the actor's name. Oh, I feel
It's okay.
great shame. But it basically, Tim Goodman's friend who helps him catch the Cubone.
In the beginning.
But we
Right.
have,
Beginning.
but now there's a Latino in the underground Poke Battle.
That is true. Oh
What's
yeah,
his
that's
face?
true. Yeah, we really know our movies. They're up to a great start. It probably speaks to the separation of writers and sometimes like the production process because you write something many years before it comes out in theaters and like there are certain changes that happen over the course of time and then you see it and you're like, oh well, that's kind of like what I wrote, but in this case, it is extremely like what we wrote, which is nice.
So were you guys, for this movie specifically, had there been a script written before you guys came on board and then you guys rewrote it, or what was the order of operations for that?
Yeah, there was an existing script that they were working on before we came in, but then we came in and really did a major overhaul of it with Jeff, the director, and Seth and Evan also. We all sort of, as a group, came in and we're like, let's change what this movie is about.
Sure.
One of the things about animation that is both good and bad, which I'm sure Brian can attest to, is like you can change things at a pretty deep stage in the process, and it's not always fun, but it is sometimes necessary when you look at something on the page and it might read really great. It might even play in the storyboard. It might even play in the layout, which in 3D animation is sort of the stage between animation and storyboard. And then you see it animated or you see sort of how it's going and you go, oh, this doesn't work at all.
Yep. It's true. To a fault. You can change up until it comes out. Even if you really like something, sometimes people will have you alter things.
And that's the bad part about it is because like anything else, you can tinker with it pretty much until the end or until they say like, you must stop.
You have to stop.
But the good part about it is that if you have like a perfectionist brain, you really can continue to like hammer away at it until it's kind of what you want it to be. This baby Superfly used to fully snap a guy's neck in the animatic version of this movie, but I think our friends at Nickelodeon felt
It's a little too hardcore.
that might be a little hard for the first 5 minutes of the movie.
But that's how Good Burger started.
That is how good,
And Good Burger too.
Good Burger 2 was just about the aftermath.
Can I ask a question about this scene?
Yes.
Was it ever Baxter Stockman himself that turned into the Fly?
Not in our version of this movie, because one of the things that we really talked about, and we were nervous about it because obviously this is different than sort of, well, it's hard to talk about canon with the canonical version of Ninja Turtles because each version of Ninja Turtles is sort of its own thing, and I kind of look at it as generational. I think it's canonical to each generation, which version of it. But in general, Baxter and the Fly have not been separated. So we had a really long conversation about, are people going to accept this? Can we do this? Part of it came down to just understanding like the logic of
the ooze.
Ooze itself.
Yeah, there was a lot of conversations. It was just like, what does this ooze actually do? And so we decided with the whole creative team of making it simple that the ooze can just mutate an animal into a humanoid. It was when in previous iterations when you have the ooze affecting humans in different ways, then it's like, wait, what is this? Like it just raised more questions. But if we're just like, this is an ooze that when it touches an animal, they evolve into this humanoid version.
I'm going to shout out the homage to the cover of the original Ninja Turtles comic here because it's one of my favorite shots in the whole movie. But yeah, it was just the rules of the ooze were a little fast and loose at times. And so when we were really breaking down how to figure out Baxter, we said it actually makes more sense to separate them, and that was a big departure. But luckily, most people really didn't get put off by it, which was great, because this is one of my jokes that I actually was really proud of. The party size bag of Doritos, it's underlined twice. Maybe I was speaking from the heart on that one, but I think it's a good joke.
But that's probably nice that they were being a little fast and loose with stuff. Like, I'm sure that makes your job a little bit easier, where you're like, we're not beholden as tightly to everything in the past. No?
I think 100%.
Yeah.
Because the second that you get into a mode where it has to be a certain way, then I think that the risk-taking and sort of the flights of creative expression become very limited in scope, and suddenly you are just kind of doing a cover version or a greatest hits version.
You're just checking boxes.
You're checking boxes,
Right.
and it's just not dynamic. And I think one of the things I've come to appreciate about Ninja Turtles as a franchise and as an idea is this will be my kids' version of Ninja Turtles. But that's very different than my Ninja Turtles, and even someone who's a touch older than me who probably started with the comics. I started with the cartoon. I got into the comics later. But each generation, even micro generation, has their own version of it that to them is the superior, best version.
Right.
So when you have so many versions that are not all working in sort of harmony with each other, that have things that are different, it does free you to say, well, in this version of it, we're going to do things a little bit differently. And the people that aren't as familiar with it will accept it as the first time that they've heard these stories and met these characters. But the people, hopefully, who are more familiar with it will see that it's spiritually akin and written with love and affection. And one of the things that we sometimes run into, and again, Brian, I'm sure you have as well, is sometimes you encounter executives or directors or whoever who are like, let me tell you the problem with Gilligan's Island. Right. He's stuck on an island, right, and he's an idiot.
Right.
And then you're like, oh,
100%.
Okay, but that is exactly what is good about Gilligan's
That's what
Island.
people like about it. I'll tell one story real quick. When I was working on Puss in Boots, Jeffrey Katzenberg told me the thing you have to remember in every scene is Puss in Boots is just a little shit. Don't ever veer from that. I was like, well, we have to a little bit.
Yeah.
We've got to grow. So I get what you mean.
So right, so sometimes you have these parameters put on you, or things that you would do if left to your own devices. And luckily, in this movie, and I think one of the reasons it was so well received is that we were kind of able to do whatever we wanted, but because the group that was creating this movie really had a deep affection and understanding, I think, of Ninja Turtles, it never felt like it was so far afield that it didn't feel like Ninja Turtles.
Benji, what is your Ninja Turtles? Like, when you think of Ninja Turtles, apart from this movie, what was the first thing that you remember watching or reading?
The cartoon was
Yeah.
my whole life as a kid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was like, dressing up as Ninja Turtles every Halloween, Michelangelo. My first concert I ever went to was Ninja Turtles live in concert.
Oh, wow. Is that the Out of the Shell?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
I'm
Okay.
jealous of that. That's a good
at
first
the
concert.
Universal Amphitheater,
Wow.
RIP. They demolished it to build Harry Potter Land.
Sure.
Progress,
Oh, well.
Yeah.
The marches forward. Time, the great devourer.
Benji, was Michelangelo always your favorite?
Always my favorite
Mm-hmm.
because I'm just so chill.
Gotcha. How about you, Dan?
I am historically a Raphael kind of guy. I think Raphael is definitely the closest to me personality-wise. But interestingly, over the course of writing this movie, I came to have a real appreciation for Donnie in a way that I never did
Donnie
before.
was the most fun to write in this movie because it's a different version of Donnie than people are used to, and he was just very funny to write lines for.
This might be a controversial question. Is there one that's not fun to write for?
No.
No.
No,
Are any of them harder to write for?
I think Leonardo is the hardest to write for.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of the Cyclops problem in X-Men,
Sure.
which is
He's too cool.
he's just too cool. But when you have a leader character who is sort of
He's a straight man.
He's a straight man.
He's like, kind of a stick in the mud.
But what was great about this one is that he isn't so far on his journey to being the leader in this one that he couldn't mess up, that he couldn't be immature, that he couldn't still be a kid. And so we were able, I think in many ways this is Leonardo's movie. And it was written that way very intentionally because we felt that he hadn't really, I would say that the live action Ninja Turtles from the late 80s, which I also love. That's Raphael's movie. I think that you come away with that being like, Raph is the coolest one. He's the most fleshed out. He's got the most sort of internal life. And in this one, we said, wouldn't it be interesting to obviously give them all interesting arcs and things like that, but let's really see what it means to be a leader for Leonardo at a sort of fledgling moment for this team, and how the onus of that really fell on him. And there were iterations of the script where he was even more so struggling with the balance between trying to honor what Splinter is wanting him to be and become, but also like not wanting to sell out his brothers. And some of that fell out for time reasons, but that was very intentional from the start of our version of the script.
I also love that you made Leonardo the turtle with the crush on April. Like Raphael was the one with the crush in the live action, and Donnie was, I believe, in the original Nickelodeon cartoon. But it gave Leonardo a chance to be kind of insecure and in this as well.
I think that was also a great development. I know that was something that Seth really felt excited about. That they're teenagers and they get crushes, and I think it also, I don't know if this is the right word, but it humanized him, turtleized him, human turtleized him, in the sense that his other brothers could rag on him for being sort of a romantic and sort of having these teenage romantic longings. And I think that helped dimensionalize Leonardo as a character because he's not perfect.
Right.
How did you get involved with it to begin with? Like, who came to you? How did you find out about it?
We were working with Seth and Evan and Point Grey on the Figment movie for Disney at the time, and we had a great working relationship with them, and we were getting along. And when they were realizing that they wanted to change up this Turtles movie they were working on, they came to us and said, "Hey, do you guys, how do you feel about Ninja Turtles?" And we were like, "Oh man, we are experts on Ninja Turtles." And yeah, it just sort of came through that.
They actually called just before Christmas, and I thought that they were calling because the Figment script was running a little bit behind. So I almost didn't answer the call because I was like, oh man, they're calling to yell at us. And it was one of those where I sort of answered with sort of an artificial joviality of like, hey, so you're probably calling about the script. It's going amazing. We need a little more time. And then it sort of transitioned to like, I know you guys are so busy, but like, would you be interested in writing Ninja Turtles? We really could use you guys right now. And it's not an exaggeration to say that when Benji and I started our careers, there was a short list of things that we really hoped someday we would be able to get to write. Benji and I have always really been interested in writing big IP. Maybe it's because we're born in the 80s and grew up in the 90s, and we have a deep affection for this. We really enjoy doing it. It's not to say that we don't like doing original things too, but we really enjoy it, and it's a fun challenge. And between this and Star Wars, I would say that those were our 1 and 2 sort of shared things, and now we've gotten to do both of them. So it's pretty cool that it's come around. And as a matter of fact, years before we got this job, we actually met to write a live action version of Ninja Turtles when it was still being produced by Michael Bay's company, I think, or Platinum Dunes, I think, or I can't remember the exact, composition, but
yeah, they were. Well, the people, I think they've leaked something. Like they were looking to do a new version using traditional Henson Company suits.
Yes.
We
even saw the screen
with
test
the latest technology to make them talk and stuff, and
they look cool.
They look cool, but then this movie sort of took over from that. But we met on that one, and we pitched a bunch of ideas, and we got fairly close to getting, and we didn't get the job.
And we were bummed.
And we were
out.
super bummed. But it's just to show how things come around, because one of the big ideas that we pitched when we were trying to get the live action version is let's focus on actually making them feel like teenagers.
And it sounds fake, but that was actually our big idea for their version of that movie. And so when we kind of got involved with Seth, Evan, and Jeff, and they said, well, our big angle is that they're actual teenagers. We're like, oh my God, that's what we wanted to do the whole time. Yeah. And so it kind of became this kind of full circle thing that was pretty cool.
Because this is, correct me if I'm wrong, the first time that actual teenagers have done the voice for them?
Yeah,
correct.
Right? It's always usually like men in their 30s or something like
Corey
that.
Feldman.
Yeah.
Corey was probably I think they sneak in a real Jackie Chan here in a
Oh, that's cool.
in a second. I can't remember. I think we might have missed it, but
So by the time you guys came in, did you know, say Jackie Chan is doing the voice, or
No.
no, actually. There were a lot of things about this movie that were pleasant surprises.
Yeah.
There was actually a different actor who was great as Splinter in the sort of the scratch track, which is, for people that don't know, sometimes when you're making an animated movie, you'll have either hopefully it's like an actually good actor step in and kind of do it on a temporary basis before they make a final decision about who's going to be that actor. And sometimes the person who kind of steps in and does that does end up with the part, because you find yourself being like, well, I missed the old version of this, even though that person maybe isn't as famous or whatever. Other times it's like an editor.
Have you guys done it? I've had to do it before.
We have done it a few times on
we would do it on
Koala Man. On Koala Man, we would do it from
time to time. We did
time
a
to
little
time.
on Lego Star Wars.
A little on Lego Star Wars when we couldn't get someone in the studio or whatever, and there was a deadline or something. Right. So and the benefit of the writers doing it, in my opinion, is the cadence of how you have written it and how you want it to sound in your brain. And so I actually think in many cases the writers are the best people to do that scratch, because
the intention is,
they know what it's the rhythm of it, right? So but in this case we did not know it was Jackie Chan until much later in the process, and we were absolutely thrilled to
Jackie is amazing in it.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
He's really great.
Awesome in it. And I think, correctly, once it was Jackie, they leaned into the classic Jackie fighting style in a lot of Splinter's moves, which I think was an ingenious decision on the part of Jeff and the animators, because I think it really adds a dynamic to Splinter that is a little bit different than the previous Splinters. Sure. And I think that is... You're always looking for like a new lane when you're adapting something that is so known and so beloved. And I mean, there's really nothing, in my opinion. Well, there are a few things as archetypical in the sense of like the turtles. They really do correspond to certain kinds of personalities, and everybody has their favorite turtle. I don't care when you, like, if you were born in the last 40 years, you have a favorite turtle, and you have a reason why it's your favorite turtle. So how do you find a new lane within that? And I think that's one of the challenges of good adaptation. It was something that we also faced when we wrote Detective Pikachu, which is there were some very strict parameters in that movie, which is the other side of it is Detective Pikachu. They said, well, because this is based on Detective Pikachu and not Pokemon Red or not some of the classic Pokemon, there's no battles, there's no trainers. You can have a Pokeball, but only for a minute. And if you watch that movie, there's only a Pokeball in that movie for about 60 seconds.
That's right. Wow.
And that is not that was intentional in the sense that was the mandate. That was a directive.
Do you know why they didn't want? I mean, we're not talking about that movie.
I know we're not talking, but I guess this is sort of the we'll call it the dark side of IP, which is sometimes for whatever reason the people that own the IP have a certain feeling about it, or they say. I think in that case they really wanted Detective Pikachu to feel like its own thing.
Okay. When they created Rhyme City for the Detective Pikachu game, like it's very much like separate from the rest of the Pokemon world. You're not in the Kanto region. You're not a part of normal Pokemon lore. It's a city where there are no battles. There are, no trainers. Like it's humans and Pokemon living side by side, and so they really wanted it to feel distinct and different from any Pokemon that's come before.
So what ends up happening is, in that case, it did feel a little bit like writing Star Wars without the Force or lightsabers or ships. So there were times where it felt very daunting not to be able to lean on like those archetypes or the things that people were super familiar with. Ultimately, I think it did become creatively freeing because the expectations of what people were going to see were, you weren't going to see that because that's just like, you weren't going to see Ash because that's just not what this movie is. It can't be.
Gotcha.
So I think each adaptation of these huge IPs is its own unique challenge, because sometimes there are parameters that are sort of invisible parameters that only the writers are dealing with that, the public maybe doesn't necessarily understand. So you have to try to figure out how to still tell the story while working within whatever those boundaries are.
you guys were called in an article recently, IP whisperers, when they were talking about Star Wars Lego. Correct?
Didn't hate it.
No, that's insane.
Didn't hate it.
And accurate, because you guys, what you just said, you were kind of handcuffed. You couldn't do certain things, but you're both so good at figuring out what excites you about what you're working on and putting that in the script. And that's not easy.
No, and we try to approach whenever we adapt IP, like, we approach these things not just as fans, but like, like there's a balance you have to make where it's like you need to love the thing. You see a lot of adaptations that are made by people that clearly don't love the thing that they're adapting, and you can see through it, and it doesn't work. But then sometimes when you love something a lot, you can be almost you hold on to things a little too strictly, that sometimes you need to bend things, or as we talked about before, you need to change the lore a little, and people are afraid to do it. They think the fans will get upset, but what we sort of learned from Pikachu and this is, if you approach something and make changes, but if you approach it with love and like it's clear that you are a fan of the thing, people are actually open to you changing stuff.
Speaking of changing stuff, April was a big swing. Like, she's different than she's ever been in this version, but she's one of the best Aprils that's been. Like, she's not sure of herself. She's throwing up on live TV.
That was actually a very late breaking development that we pitched in a later writing session. That was actually one of those big.
Once most of the movie was animated already, we realized that April was always unsure of herself in previous drafts, but we felt like there still wasn't quite enough for her. And so, the throwing up and all that stuff was like sort of the last thing put into the movie.
Oh, that was great.
Is there a TMNT like guy? Is there someone who runs that brand at this point?
There are some people within Paramount that control it, but because it's not like some of the other IP where there is like the separate rights holder.
Sure.
You're not, like with Detective Pikachu, like there is the Pokemon company.
Yes.
And everything goes through them, and they are it's a whole company that's just focused on Pokemon. But Ninja Turtles, the rights are fully sold to Paramount. So it's sort of what Paramount wants to do, and they have, an executive.
They've done a lot with it.
Right. They have an executive who's in charge of, helping steer the brand, but it's not like when with Pokemon, you're like dealing with the creator of these Pokemon.
Sure.
The Eastman and Laird are removed from the process.
I exchanged a very nice email with Eastman, who genuinely loves this movie.
Oh, that's great.
And that was really a really cool moment. And I just sent him a little note. I was like, "Hey, thank you for letting us take your guys for a spin." And he wrote back, "I legitimately love the movie. I think it's just great."
Can I take it one further? This is one of his favorite iterations of the characters. He told me. Yeah.
Well,
How crazy is that?
That's a pretty cool. That's okay. I don't hate that. Yeah. That made us feel good because we have been fortunate in our careers to sometimes get feedback like that from sort of the source, and when that happens, it does sort of give you like shields up from haters or people that are uptight online or whatever, like,
because it doesn't matter if those people don't like it if the original guy
it's
kind of like it, or it matters less.
You want everyone to like it, but it's when Eastman is saying, "Hey, it's one of my favorite versions of Ninja Turtles," so I'm like, "All right, well, what else do I need to hear?" Or or in Lego Star Wars, with Mark Hamill, he said, part of the reason that I really want to do this is that I read your script and I think you guys really understand Star Wars.
How great is that?
It's crazy.
And I was like, well, that's all I need to hear as far as feeling sort of confident about what we were presenting and sort of going forward with feeling like we had captured what we had set out to do. And I think that this movie, Ninja Turtles, is probably the best example of we all as a group, I think, really did what we set out to do. And it doesn't always go down like that. It certainly doesn't go down like that most of the time, as a matter of fact. And we weren't in charge of the production of this, in Star Wars, at least we had we were showrunners. We were able to sort of steer all aspects of that production. But in these big movies.
Right. This was more of a traditional movie where where we write a script and then say, all right, see you at the premiere, essentially, and then they go off and make it. And a lot of the time you're like, what are they doing with my baby that I just wrote?
What happened?
And it's rare that, well, I mean, one, it's rare that it lives up to what was in your head when you were writing it. But what's even rarer, and I think what happened with Mutant Mayhem, is it surpassed what was in our head when we saw the final thing. And it just, when we went to the first screening of the rough animation version, like, it blew our minds, and we were like, holy shit, like, Jeff did it.
I mean, even right now, I actually have not seen the movie since we saw it in theaters last year. And even in watching it right now, I'm going, this is a really beautiful looking movie.
Yep.
It looks terrific.
The art is so cool, and it's like such an interesting style. A lot of people will obviously compare to Spider-Verse or whatever, but it's like different than the Spider-Verse art.
Sure.
It feels more tactile, and it feels more like someone drew this or someone whatever. How much of that had you seen going into it? Was there concept art?
There was concept art early on. I mean, Jeff from the start was, in line with the wanting the turtles to feel like teenagers. Like, he wanted it to have that high school feel that like the doodles in the margins of your notebook is like what the movie is. Like, these kids sort of fantasizing about this heroic life they could have.
Yeah.
And so, there was a lot of early concept art of like what this doodle thing would look like, and then in the middle of us writing it is when they got the first like 3D renders of what some of this stuff would look like in 3D. And it was really awesome, and it was inspiring to the writing to like to see it.
There's also some really interesting things, like Woodrow, the lead character designer, really leaned into asymmetry in the character designs, which is not usual for animated movies, especially kids movies, where they want everything to be very clean and appealing. And especially when you get to like Bebop and Rocksteady, and you really see their designs, where it's like in real life they would be so top heavy that they couldn't move. Like, his head would.
I had some trouble with the action figures.
Yeah, the action figure is even kind of doesn't stand very well because he's so asymmetrical in his design. But I think that was part of the artistic aesthetic that Jeff and all the other amazing artists were going for, to say that it should be like a little ugly. It should be a little imperfect. It should be ragged glory, which is to say it should still look beautiful, but the beauty isn't a pristine beauty.
Right.
And I think that was a really wise and a very New York decision, actually, in my opinion. I think that's kind of subtly what gives it a griminess that does line up with the New York that the Turtles originally came from in the 80s, coming out of that sort of Frank Miller, Daredevil inspired Hell's Kitchen, and we're now talking about the deep roots of the Turtles and kind of what they were even a comment upon when they were invented, which was that really sort of innovative, gritty, urban storytelling that I think Frank Miller did so amazingly well in that his iconic Daredevil run. So I think that there is really an visually artistic legacy running from those things that they did in the original comics all the way through to Mutant Mayhem.
I wonder if there's pushback from Nickelodeon at all to make it cuter, to make it more kid-friendly. I don't know.
I think there was a big conversation about how far could you push it. What I know that one of the things that did come up was, and this was something that we were cognizant of when we were writing the sequel. I don't know if I was supposed to, but the hypothetically, they were very cognizant of how many scenes were in the nighttime.
Interesting.
That was a big point of discussion.
It's kind of what happened between 1 and 2 in the live action as well. It was gritty and dark, and then the second one was they shouldn't fight with their weapons. It should be during the daytime.
And I think that there are metrics that, are used internally at studios to sort of say, well, if it were brighter, then like more people would go. I don't know about the truth of that or the reality of that. It seems like something that I don't want to dismiss like reflexively, even though as like artistically I kind of do. But maybe there is truth in that. I don't know.
That is so interesting though, because you do think of these, at least I do. I think of these characters as like nighttime characters. You know what I mean? Like,
they are.
They're out at night. They're fighting crime. Like it's
the whole definition.
It's the
of
whole
Turtles,
thing.
It's what they do.
That's so interesting.
It is a nighttime character. It's a nighttime vibe. So,
but now they go to school at the end of this one.
That's true.
And
school doesn't happen at night, guys.
There's
Nighttime-
no
school.
night school for
maybe
for
they go to night
teenagers.
school.
So I think that what we felt was at least bridging the gap a little bit is because it ends with them going to school. Now you do open up the sort of range of possibilities for like locations and where they can be and how they can be. But for this one, they got to be in the sewer.
Yep.
It's got to be night.
Mhm.
They've got to be, vigilantes that are mysterious and misunderstood. And I think that this has one of my favorite jokes that Benji and I will take credit for. It's coming up. It's this guy. Hey, those Toyotas are all right. I'm a cabbie from the Bronx. I was even when we wrote it, we were like, that's a good line. They should keep that line. So I was very gratified that made it all the way to the end.
Are there any lines or things that you guys wrote that you're upset or not in it that you can think of specifically?
I mean, there are always some.
No, I know.
Yeah,
I know,
there's
but
always
I'm
something.
digging for.
I can't think of one at the moment.
Okay.
There were I think there were certain versions of the script where the mutants had sort of more individual action set pieces.
Mhm.
There was one that we wrote for Wingnut, actually. That Wingnut was like a much sort of scarier, sort of infrared bat sequence that I thought was really good. That April had to kind of deal with that herself because she didn't really have a moment where she was kind of physicalizing the action. And I think that the story changed in such a way that scene kind of became
Oh, I know the thing we
redundant.
all missed the most was that we had the pizza launcher in it.
Oh, the pizza.
Mm.
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
was
100%.
that was there till
Mhm.
almost the very end.
It almost made it to
And that's why there's the toy of it.
Oh,
which
and the
was
other toys too.
the toy of the pizza van
And the
launcher
costume
toy.
scene.
But I'm saying that was the toy of the year.
Yeah, it literally won Toy of the
wow.
Year.
And and the other thing is, the other toys that came out is you see there's some fun toys of the turtles all in their weird costumes because we had a big costume party. scene.
But this harkens back to the 90s where they did do this a line of
right.
toys
The
that
Star Trek.
the Star Trek one. So one of the
Astronauts.
costumes in that pack is the Star Trek
Right, we had them all dress up as
The classic
turtle figures.
Wow.
classic turtle
Wow.
figures from the 90s that we all had and still have in some cases. But that sequence really almost made it to the end of the line because there was a funny line that Seth told us about the toy making process, which is the toy people, I guess they say they cut metal. Was that what it was? Cut metal?
I don't
It was
remember.
like cutting metal or something like that,
Right.
which basically meant like, oh, they're made, they're
Right,
done.
it's too
Like
late.
it's
Because
too late.
the
to-
timeline on
The
toys
molds,
is so much
yeah.
longer than the timeline.
and you also find out a
that's
lot.
why you even see like in the initial Superfly action figure that came out, he's dressed in Baxter Stockman
Wow.
clothes
Oh, interesting.
because he wasn't ever Baxter Stockman fully, but there was a different version where he wore the old Baxter Stockman clothes and this and that, and we removed that from the movie, but eventually, but the toy was already in production.
Wow.
So we've learned a lot about that kind of stuff. There was another movie, I won't say which movie it was, but they wanted to delay it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the studio said, you can't delay this movie because we have a deal with McDonald's and for Happy Meals. And if you delay it, we owe them it was like $100 million.
Well,
it was like a
happened-
lot of money.
That happened a few months ago. The Captain America toys.
Oh yeah,
already
My
came
kid
out.
has a Red Hulk stuffy
Yeah.
before.
Right.
Like
That's a
almost
great
year
example.
before that movie came out.
So, that's a great example. So, you realize that there's a lot of other things, pretty unrelated to
Yeah.
art that are going on. And I don't say that as a pejorative at all.
Right.
I still have a lot of my Happy Meal toys.
Mhm.
I love those Happy Meals toys. I want kids to have Ninja Turtle Happy Meals toys if they're into it. But you also do start to realize, if the studio is going to lose $100 million, if we can make the movie 5% better, they're going to choose not to lose $100 million.
Sure.
Here's another favorite joke of ours. Their last names.
Oh, yeah, Nardo.
Michael Angelo.
Michael Angelo. Does that make you Nardo? This is one that Seth really early on. I actually felt like this was the joke that sort of made Seth ultimately decide we were the right people to write this joke. It was the first one that he got extremely excited about.
Yeah,
during our writing session.
We just had it as like a one-time line here, and Seth thought it was so funny that it became a runner. Yeah.
Was there anything they said you couldn't do with the characters? Like, so-and-so wouldn't do this, so-and-so wouldn't do that.
Not really. I do remember a conversation about how far the romance between Leonardo and April should go as far as like
human animal romance.
Sure.
Turtle.
It's a little weird.
Yeah.
It's a little weird, and I didn't disagree, honestly. So I think that it had to be handled with sort of an innocence,
right?
And it's really more of a like theoretical.
It is heartbreaking though at the end when she says she'll go to the dance with him, but then she undercuts it with but just as friends.
Just as friends, yeah.
Right.
And I think that well, aside from being funny, I think that part of it was we didn't really want to like delve too deeply into the mechanics of like what that was all about. So I think that by keeping it sort of in the sort of chaste area of romance, I think that was something that we did talk about. It wasn't
but
like
no one objected to Splinter and Scumbug having a romance.
There was no blowback?
I don't think so. And that was something that Benji and I came up with that we felt really excited about. And every now and then, and Brian, I'm sure you have experienced this, is like you write something, you're like, well, there's no way this is making it through.
Right.
Someone certainly at some point, some adult will stop this from happening.
Right.
And every now and then they just don't.
Right. In the new Minions movie, they have a relationship with Splinter as well.
Yeah. I thought they would stop that for sure.
Now, I remember when the movie wasn't out yet, Scumbug's poster said it was a boy.
Yeah.
When it was when Splinter and Scumbug had a relationship, certain areas of the internet were like, "Oh, Splinter's gay."
Yes,
you just never know what's gonna.
Scumbug was always a woman, and
right.
we wrote her that way, and that's how it always was. And I think it was just like one typo,
a marketing.
On
I think it literally was like someone got confused.
Scumbug as himself, right?
Yeah,
I think someone got confused on like the marketing side of things on Instagram, and all of a sudden, a lot of angry people.
Patrick, you were very mad.
I was really mad. I wasn't going to bring it up.
Texting me nonstop.
I didn't want to do this episode because I didn't want to talk about this.
Now, when you pick Superfly's like team,
Yeah.
Are you guys picking your favorite toys?
100%.
Who were your favorites?
I think Benji really led the charge on that particular aspect of team selection here.
Yeah, no, we had so many meetings with Seth and Evan and Jeff, and we're like, we had a group chat going where I would just text random toys like, hey, remember this one? Remember this one? The one that got everyone excited. Nobody remembered Genghis Frog until I sent a picture of the old Genghis Frog toy, and everyone was like, oh yeah, we got to do Genghis Frog.
And that's also where Scumbug...
It's such a silly name.
Well, Genghis
Scumbug
Frog
was another one.
Scumbug was another one. And so when he texted us Scumbug, I was like, wow. That immediately suggested to me that they speak Vermin.
Right.
Which I think is one of my other favorite things that's in the movie. And that it would seem to make sense that Splinter and Scumbug would sort of...
But it truly was like the professional equivalent of playing with your old action figures, where it was just like remembering our and it was hard to pick.
And there were a lot more that we wanted to use, but as is so often the case, this was certainly true in Pokemon. There's a certain cost associated with any kind of character design that you're in Pokemon.
Who do you miss the most that's not in there? I stumped them, Patrick.
I'm trying to remember who was in it at various points. I kept trying to get the Mousers in there.
Oh, okay.
And it just never seemed to work.
Okay.
But I really wanted the Mousers because I just felt like there were a lot of different ways I thought that they could make sense, like as a security device at TCRI or as a defense mechanism within Baxter's own lab at the beginning.
We had Rat King for a while.
Oh, Rat King.
Oh, wow.
Yes, we had Rat King was in it for a really long time as sort of in the equivalent of this guy.
That was the Rat King design.
That was the Rat King design because, but I think part of the problem with Rat King was his name. It started to become confusing as to like
we have a different human rat character that is not Rat King. Like it just it was a little murky.
It was like a little funky, and so ultimately Rat King fell out. But Rat King was in it for like ever.
Was there anything you put in specifically because you were like, I want this toy?
The van,
the pizza shooter.
the shooter.
Oh, wow.
Because
Okay.
that was
100%.
the OG pizza shooter was one of my favorite toys ever. And actually, many years ago, I was telling Dan about, like, this was like at least a decade ago, 10, 15 years ago. I was telling Dan about how sad I was that, like, my mom gave away my Ninja Turtles toys and I missed my pizza shooter and this and that. And Dan got me a pizza shooter on eBay as a gift
In the early days of eBay. I didn't have a ton of money, but I was like, well, Benji needs his pizza shooter back.
Yes, and so to make the new one was very thrilling for
Toy
us.
of the year.
Were you ever worried that kids would shoot other kids with pizzas?
I think it's a rite of passage.
That's a proud.
I think that's part of
tradition.
It's part of growing up.
I have a question, and this might just be a naive question. They just mentioned like Arizona iced tea.
Yeah.
Is that something that needs to be okayed by people, or is that just like we're just naming a product and it doesn't
I
matter?
think there's clearance people that get involved, and
There are definitely clearance people that get
But that
involved.
is in the script. You guys would write Arizona iced tea.
So the thing about the turtles and their dialogue with each other is Seth really likes to work improvisationally, which probably is obvious from his own, like on-screen
Oeuvre.
stuff. And so he really encouraged the Turtle Boys.
well, it's like normally,
Turtle boys.
normally for animation, a lot of the time you record actors individually.
Yes.
But Seth really pushed to get these guys together.
Call them by their names.
These four turtle boys.
Thank you.
In the room together, and they did almost all of their recording as a group. And in those group sessions, they just started
They went off.
riffing and
Sure.
doing their thing, and that's why a lot of their dialogue feels so current and Gen Z. It's not like Dan and I are brilliant at writing like Gen Z slang.
we tried,
But
and succeeded at times, but it's really hard to replicate that when there's four kids who genuinely like each other, just like riffing on whatever shared references that they have. And so I think that's part of where some of the pop culture jokes end up. And I think Seth and Evan also really like those kind of jokes. I would say that Benji and I tend to not write those kind of jokes as much. But in this context, I think it made a lot of sense because that's how teenagers talk. And they do have a shared frame of reference, and I think it actually works really well here.
I love them stepping on each other's dialogue. That's what I mean. I've worked on a lot of anime movies where that you just can't get that because you're doing it individually, and it's just so great to see them all over each other. It's
Do
great.
you all agree with Splinter
About everything?
about is Pine the best Chris?
Oh man.
Well, I met Chris Pine, so
Okay.
he has the inside edge with me.
I went to high school with Chris Pine.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Wow.
And do you consider him the best Chris?
I mean, I have to just because we
You
grew
went
up
to high school
together.
Yeah. Wow.
We never spoke. He was a few years older. We
Sure.
never spoke, but
Is he in a yearbook of yours?
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's fun.
he was extremely nice when I met him, so I have to give him huge props for that. But also, I think the handsomest human being I've ever seen in my life. Man,
Why?
like,
Who's your favorite Chris?
No, I think he's my favorite Chris. We just rewatched Dungeons and Dragons a few nights ago.
Yeah.
And he's great in it.
He's
so funny in it.
He's tremendous.
Yeah.
And,
More than Hemsworth. Do you like Pine more than Hemsworth?
I think so.
Interesting.
I like Hemsworth.
We are
I definitely
Hemsworth
like
fans.
Hemsworth.
I don't dislike any
I
of
like
these
all the
Chris's.
all the
you guys
Chris's.
don't like Chris Hemsworth.
I like all the Chris's.
All these Chris's are very likable fellas.
But I've made skin-to-skin contact via my hand with Chris Pine, and that changes a fella.
Was
you know?
it his hand too?
I hope so. I think so. I guess I hadn't thought to question that, but as far as I could tell, when we shook hands, it was the real deal, and so it's you can't be the same after that.
Yeah.
Does he know about this joke? Did you talk about this joke?
We did not talk about this joke.
he doesn't even know that we went to high school together.
I hope that he.
Oh, man.
Maybe he does. What if he does?
He's
You
been
don't think
secretly
he's on a
following my
podcast
career.
now talking about you.
He might be talking about you right now on the
He's
Dungeons
like,
and
I went
Dragons.
to high school with Benji Samit, but he doesn't know.
Okay, so let's talk about these boys.
Bebop.
Let's what are your feelings on Bebop? What are your feelings on Rocksteady? Who's your favorite? Are they easy to write? Let's go through all of it.
I can't pick they are a unit.
Yes.
And we write them as a unit, as a team.
No different than Beavis and
Because
Butthead.
it's
Yeah.
Seth and John Cena, is
Yes.
that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Seth
okay.
and John Cena, which is amazing.
Well, that's funny. And when we first wrote it, we didn't know who anyone was going to be played by, so we sort of wrote them in I guess, more traditional way. But then there was a moment where they called us and were like, "We're trying to get John Cena. Can you do a pass on all of all the Rocksteady lines to make it more John Cena?"
Yeah, we did the Cena pass for Rocksteady, and I guess we did a decent job.
Did a great job.
So Seth hadn't even decided that he wanted to do it.
I think we knew that Seth was going to do something.
Sure.
I think that there was a moment where
when there was Rat King, he was maybe gonna be Rat King. It was like he jumped between a few different things, but once we settled on Bebop and Rocksteady being a bigger part of the movie, I think that's when Seth.
I wonder if there is hesitation from Seth because he already played a warthog in Lion King.
it was discussed.
There was a little bit of like, is this weird? But
Now he's the go-to.
But he's
guy.
the warthog guy now, so it's fine. He's doing all right.
Do you guys have Turtles recently, especially, have been doing a lot of crossovers with other IPs?
Yeah.
Is there one that you're like, I would love to see Turtles meets Abbott Elementary? Is there something that you're like, this is the one? That's the one. Yeah. Because they've done X-Files, they've done Ghostbusters, they've done Stranger Things.
Is very
He-Man.
popular.
Yeah.
Live action Turtles and Stranger Things would be very funny.
Yeah.
I think you got to get the Thundercats and the Turtles. I want all animal people.
Okay.
Thundercats,
The biker mice from Mars.
biker mice from Mars,
Street Sharks.
Space Beaver.
Can we talk, Brian? You printed out some stuff.
Yeah,
we could probably talk
I
about
was
this
just,
now.
I love the Turtles, and I remember there being a ton of Turtle ripoffs throughout the years, and I have a list of the more memorable ones. Everyone knows adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters,
which I own the first issue of that in my comic archive. So yes, check.
Okay, cold-blooded chameleon commandos.
I don't have that one, but I remember it from the day.
Patrick, we take this next one. It's hard for me to say.
Geriatric gangrene jujitsu gerbils.
Oh,
that's our next project.
They are they're green gerbils who are retired, but they get called back into action after their creator, Dr. Milton Meltdown, is murdered.
That sounds good to me, to be honest.
But you could get all older actors. How fun would that be?
Ian McKellen came to mind. Patrick Stewart, get the gang back together.
We should, let's stop this podcast.
Stop the podcast. Text our agent immediately.
I think this one's my favorite. Preteen, Dirty Gene, Kung Fu Kangaroos. And the Turtles are in the third issue, and Peter Laird inked it.
Wow.
Well, that sounds like that's canon to me. So we gotta call Nick.
Yeah, we gotta get them in.
Patrick, what's this next one?
Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa.
I don't know that.
So
one.
I believe that they were cows who were also themselves cowboys.
Yes. Created by the guy who designed the original toys.
But like, what did they wrangle cows as cowboy cows?
Wrangled themselves.
I think they wrangled themselves.
Wow.
But I think they had hats. They had cowboy hats.
And they were in an episode of the Ninja Turtle show from the 90s.
Yep.
Cyborgs. Pig cyborgs from space.
Good.
These are all this is gold.
Snailians. Alien snail toy line. They come from Snail Francisco.
I think I remember that one.
That one, the Snail Francisco. I mean, that's definitely, maybe spend 5 more minutes.
Let's see if we can guess, if they can guess what their catchphrase is.
Oh, God.
Snailians?
Yeah, what do they yell when they're running into battle very slowly, I'd imagine?
Let's go.
Oh, you're so close.
Let's go ooze cruise.
You got one of the words right.
Right.
Ooze.
Go ahead, Pat.
Go escargot.
Go escargot.
All right, now I'm back in on them.
Samurai Pizza Cats. That's a pretty big one.
That's limited, sort of in scope of the adventures, I guess.
Sure.
It really has to all be pizza centric, but
Yes,
I mean, I feel like maybe it's like a niche thing. Maybe we do a Domino's partnership or like a Little Caesars.
Hey, pizza was big in the 80s.
Well, you guys had Pizza Hut for this one.
We did.
Yeah,
Can I tell you a story about this?
Yes, and we have a story too.
We were doing the George Lucas Talk Show, another show that I do with Connor Ralph and Griffin Newman, and we were in Edinburgh, Scotland last year in August.
Fancy guys.
We were doing a month in Edinburgh, right? We walk by a Pizza Hut. There's a giant poster for the Big New Yorker, which was the name of the TMNT Mutant Mayhem pizza outside. Connor goes, we have to go to Pizza Hut. We were like, Connor, we're in Scotland. Like, we're not going to Pizza Hut. Let's go get some, like local Scottish food, whatever. He goes, no, this is the only thing I want to do. This is all I want to do. We go in, we sit down, and they go, oh, we don't have that. They didn't have the big New Yorker.
What?
But they had the poster.
They had the poster up.
That's outrageous.
And we were furious. And Connor goes, "We need to just go home."
Did you report them to corporate?
We should have.
I agree with Connor. To be quite
we didn't even have dinner that night. He said, "We're just going home. We're not even getting other dinner."
No,
he didn't want anything else.
He was right. He was right.
Infuriating.
I guess that was like maybe it was part of the Fringe.
Yeah,
maybe
I don't know.
That was the art. Experiment.
When the Pizza Hut promotions happened, everyone who worked at Pizza Hut had a Mutant Mayhem T-shirt, like an employee T-shirt. And Dan,
which I almost wore today, but then I thought it would be overkill.
Dan and I, well, you're getting ahead of the story, which is Dan and I. We were like, we need that
100%.
shirt. How do we get that shirt?
Yeah,
and they were selling for crazy prices on eBay because people wanted that employee shirt. And Dan,
I launched a shameless campaign online.
You tweeted
back when Twitter verification meant something, which was useful.
The good old days.
And I just tweeted at them. I was like, look, I did book it in the 90s, which for you youngsters out there was there was a promotion. First of all, let's go back to the 90s for a second.
Yeah, sure.
And I think this is
right
important.
while Mondo Gecko's on screen, the perfect time.
This is actually important. Pizza Hut, as you know it, kids, is not the Pizza Hut that we grew up with.
Oh, no.
And in fact, Pizza Hut was a fancy. Okay, fancy may not be the right word.
It was a sit-down event.
It was a sit-down event restaurant. It was like, and for us in Coral Springs, Florida, there was one, and Friday night at the Pizza Hut on Sample Road, it was bumping. Every kid in Coral Springs was there. And so they would do these promotions, and they had video games, and it was just like awesome. Personal pan pizza. And they did a promotion called Book It. And so the way that it worked is that you if you read a book at school, you could get it like a sticker on your Book It sort of like little card.
Yeah.
And if you read enough books, you got a free pizza at Pizza Hut. So for a nerd, an aspiring nerd like myself, and at the time an aspiring,
pizza eater,
portly fella, a portly fella in training, this was truly the greatest confluence of events that has ever occurred. So I would read all these books so I could get the pizza at Pizza Hut through the Book It program. Sure. And so part of my pitch to whoever runs the Pizza Hut Twitter account,
you were going to bring it back?
I was like, no, it was actually more guilt driven than that. I was like, look, I was in the Book It.
Right.
Like
I've been supporting you guys.
I have supported you guys from the beginning. It's time for you to support me. Send us this shirt. Not only did they send us the shirt, they sent us
a nice little care package.
They sent us a nice little care package, including a hat that says "Nobody out pizzas the Hut."
Wow.
Which was a preview of your next project.
Which was a preview of our very next project.
I have a Book It story that is not mine, but I'm going to share it.
Okay.
Because it's someone famous.
Okay.
Lorene Scafaria, who has written Hustlers and The Meddler.
Yeah.
She loved Pizza Hut as growing up, but she didn't love reading. So she would get the free pizza by making up books and writing a fake summary to books that didn't exist. And then she'd get the free pizza, and she thinks that's her origin as to how she became such a good writer.
I was going to say, that sounds like it could have been a subplot in Hustlers.
Right.
A little bit like it kind
Kitty
of...
Hustlers.
Kitty Hustlers.
Oh, it's Hustlers Babies. It's the new cartoon.
That was smart. That would have been smart.
This is making me think of, there's a very fun subreddit called Former Pizza Huts.
Oh, okay.
Because you guys remember the old Pizza Hut sit-down restaurant had such an iconic roof.
Very specific look.
The roof
was
that like in the logo. It was that hut.
It was the hut.
But there are so many of those buildings that are used to be Pizza Huts that still have that roof, and so people just post pictures of buildings.
So it's like, here's a Chase Bank that was a Pizza Hut.
That was clearly it used to be a Pizza Hut. You should check it out.
I will go check it out.
It sounds like something you would do.
All right, that was the old timers. That was the old timers corner.
I do want to say I read the Art of book for this movie. I really like the Art of.
It's a great book.
It's very interesting. They talked about Mondo Gecko, and the guy who was designing it said he had to get it done, and he had to stay late at work because if he did not get it done, the toy would not be ready.
Wow.
He said they were not going to make a toy.
That sounds about right.
Had that design not been done, so he stayed and did dozens of designs until he finally figured it out.
And we saw a lot of those designs, and they were super
a lot
cool.
of these mutants sort of came in pretty late in the process.
Sure.
And so, yeah, they had to rush to get the toys out. That's why some of these mutants only came out in wave 2 of the toys.
Oh, interesting. Now, when you're writing a script, and I think this is just something that people find interesting, there's an action scene like this, or they're fighting, or whatever, any action scene.
Yes.
How much are you writing of this scene? Like, and how much of this is done when they're just animating
We
it later
definitely
on?
write a version of it, but like you kind of write it like knowing that the director and the animators are going to do something better,
Sure.
you know?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that what we have found a little bit in our careers is that if you are too prescriptive about things like action sequences, I think it actually stifles creativity, and I think that it stifles. You have to remember how many people work on these movies. I mean, there are, if not hundreds. Thousands.
Yeah.
You know, right? And especially in things like the storyboard group or the animation group, like they're all at the absolute top of their field. Brilliant artists in and of their own right. So I think that when you are too prescriptive, you're actually taking away the spark of innovation and creativity.
Right. Yeah, let these awesome people do what they do best. You know, sometimes we will literally write in a script like an awesome action set piece happens here. Like we don't get into it very much at all. Sometimes we go into a little more detail when there's like some very specific character movements and mechanics that need to happen. Of these guys need to be here, these guys need to be here, or like if there's an emotional beat that's really important, we'll spell that out. But a lot of the time we'll be like, go do your thing, you know.
We find that it allows people to try things that they might not otherwise try, and sometimes that, you know, it doesn't work or it goes too far or there's some reason that you're like, you know, I don't want to do that. But most of the time, when you tell people to follow their hearts, they come up with things that are awesome and that you could never have anticipated or even conceptualized. So it is interesting. I'll speak for myself, which is it's interesting to write animation and to be terrible at drawing.
Sure.
Just the worst. Truly, I am at the same level of artistic ability as I was in second grade. Wow. And so the other day, I did something that I have never done before, which everyone made fun of me about, but actually was super helpful. I was like, Benji, I'm having trouble with writing this sequence. I think I'm going to storyboard it.
Wow.
And he was like, what?
Because Dan cannot draw in the slightest.
But I was like,
not really.
Okay.
I was like, I think I got to do it. And so I broke it into panels in my sort of rudimentary way. And it actually really, really did unlock what I was trying to get at. And this is all to say, like, I know how difficult it is to do that. And like now having attempted it, I'm like, why don't we just let those guys, know, those peeps do what they think is best. And if there is something that needs sort of alteration, and I'm talking now about things like Lego Star Wars where we're sort of more directly giving notes or Koala Man. If there's something that doesn't work for me, I'll be like, and I always try to have a reason. I'm like, the reason that I think that we should change this is X, Y, or Z. But most of the time, they're going to come up with something that is better than what you could have written, sort of very precisely.
So looking at this is another one of those things that we did not think was going to last from when we wrote it, which was having the turtles getting milked.
Yeah. Dark. Kind of dark.
A
little dark.
We were just
a
like,
little silly.
Are they? Who's going to allow this?
Sure.
But we started calling it milking sort of like colloquially between ourselves.
Right.
And then at a certain point, we're like, oh, we'll just write it in the script because Seth will think it's funny because, he was enjoying saying the turtles get milked.
Yeah, we were just like, we would just joke around with Seth about milking the turtles, and then it became
a bigger runner than I think that we ever thought that it would be. And even after we were done writing it, it continued to expand in its sort of like prominence in the movie.
It gets a huge reaction in theaters. Kids like the milk jokes.
It's hilarious. It just felt like the kind of thing that they would stop us from doing. I will point out Cynthia Utrom's glasses and make no other comment about that for the deep fans.
When you're writing, Maya, right, is playing Cynthia in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah. When you're writing, do you have someone in mind, even if you're like, I know this person is not going to be in the movie, but I'm going to write it as if it's, Meryl Streep or whatever? Or did you find it easier to just write a character and not think of a person?
I think with that one,
Not even that character specifically.
I think
but
we
in
maybe
general.
knew it was Maya, or she came on board in the middle of us.
There was
Okay.
definitely a conversation that Maya was going to be involved in some capacity. I don't think we necessarily knew which, but then once
because she was in Mitchell's versus the Machine.
Oh, yes.
I will say that,
and Jeff worked on that.
Cynthia Utram was something that we brought to this movie.
Okay.
That character did not exist before our involvement in the movie. If you're familiar with the lore of Ninja Turtles, that name has some significance, which I don't think is like people have definitely sniffed that out. But that was something that once that character came into existence and it was decided like actually we're going to go with this and we're going to keep this character, then it became clear that that was probably who Maya was going to play, and so that was helpful for us as we were writing it.
Did the script say the glasses, or was that a touch that came later?
The glasses themselves came later, but I mean, her character's arc went a little bit farther even than in our original.
Oh, really? There was a reveal.
There was
a
reveal.
reveal.
Interesting.
But I think that they may held that for hypothetical things in the future.
Gotcha. Sequels.
That's what I meant. I meant sequels. Because we're in the business of making sequels. Money, baby.
TV shows.
Yeah, there's
TV shows.
Yeah.
It's like an ATM made of turtles. No, but Cynthia Utram is cool, and I am proud of that character, and I really think that her design is awesome.
Let's talk about the braces. One of those turtles has braces.
Yeah.
Who decided that? Where'd that come from?
What's your problem with braces?
No, it's cool. That's my thing. Is I think it's cool.
It just sounds
because
like
if you grabbed 4
Yes.
15-year-old boys,
Yes.
one of them's gonna have braces.
But I want to ask a bigger question.
Who
here.
put them on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Splinter.
Splinter did
Yeah.
that. Splinter did it.
He did a YouTube tutorial. It's not. I mean, we could probably Google one. We could probably YouTube it right now.
You could order braces right now.
We could.
online.
I could put
Yeah, I'm
braces on you.
Well, I don't want
tonight.
that. No, I don't want that though.
But
Tonight.
But what I'm
Sounds like
telling
a
you
bad
is,
idea.
if you come back later, I will put braces on you
Okay,
after
all
I
right, let
study
me-
this tutorial
let
on
me think
YouTube.
about
Look,
Okay.
he was like, your turtle teeth are not coming in.
How
right?
did Donnie get glasses
He had
in
to
his?
find glasses.
How did he get glasses in
That's a
his
great
exact
question.
prescription?
That's a
These
great
are all.
question.
These are. We have accounted for every single one of your questions.
Okay. Splinter did the glasses too.
No, actually,
What happened there?
I just want
That's
the
for me
canon
to know.
answers here. I want
That's the
canon.
prequel.
that's
it's
the
literally
prequel.
about
It's
the
just
glasses.
about Donnie's glasses.
Have you guys ever written something and
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately,
That's it. Go ahead, Patrick.
No,
Thank
sorry,
you.
Patrick.
Have you
I'm
guys
sorry.
ever written something and had a story beat or a joke or an idea or something? It didn't end up in one project, but then you come back to it for a later.
Oh
project?
yeah, we steal
All
it
the
from
time.
ourselves.
Oh, okay.
Constantly. There
Yeah.
are lines that we've been trying to get onto screen for 20 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Truly, like, there's just a few that we just keep trying, and every time we think this is the time, and then it isn't, and then we're like, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to put it in something else.
Are there any you can give us out of context?
They're all racist. So
Like,
no.
is there any
They're all
joke
deeply,
that you could just be like, this is the punchline to
deeply
this joke?
upsetting.
It's okay if you can't.
Let me.
I know
that is a
that's- I
great.
know that's an
that is a
insane
great-
question.
No, it is a good question.
Pikachu had braces in the original Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, Splinter gave Pikachu braces.
We have been trying to write a monologue about why it's good to think inside the box in like
4 things now.
Mhm.
in like 4 things. It's like, oh, you want to think outside the box? Well, let me tell you something. If you got a package that arrived without a box, you'd be very upset. You'd be very upset. In fact, the box is good. We love the box.
Yeah.
That's great.
And we keep trying and we keep failing. So someday,
Which projects? Was this one of them?
not this
Not
one,
this one,
but
but
I was in
so-
Figment. That was recently in a different
Hmm.
movie that we were working on.
When you're like Figment, you guys worked on Figment for a while.
Yeah.
A story that does not have a ton of lore around it, but it does have lore,
Sure.
and the fans are very obsessive about that property.
Sure.
Something like this has a lot of lore. Do you find it easier to write with something that does not have a lot of lore, or something that does have a lot of lore because you can pull from that?
I mean, there are pros and cons
Yeah.
to both.
Yeah.
What's nice about something like Ninja Turtles is like when we start writing, like we know exactly how every character talks,
Sure.
or a version of it. Like we know these characters inside out. When we wrote Addams Family 2, like
Yeah.
it's like day one of writing it, we know what a Wednesday joke is, we know what a Gomez joke is.
Gomez is basically just like my internal monologue.
and
Sure.
and so it definitely a lot of the character work is done for you already,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just go in and piece together the story and have
the
fun.
challenge then becomes how to write a good Gomez joke, how to write a good Wesley
or
joke.
tell a version that feels
Hasn't been
fresh
done a million times.
and different and things like that. When you're doing something like Figment, where it's a beloved character, but there's not really like a beloved backstory to go with it.
Takes more time on the front end.
Yeah,
because you have to really figure it out, and you have to decide, okay, who are we writing for? What is the tonality of that? What's a Figment joke? What's a Figment physical set piece? What are the parameters of Figment's powers that are sort of hinted at in the ride, but are not explicitly talked to? But in that case, we literally talked to the Imagineers. We talked to the people from Epcot. We saw the original production designs of the original Figment ride. So there were some guidelines, but in general, the onus is on the writer to kind of figure out what it is and how you want it to be. I think that is creatively very exciting to be able to get to kind of decide what it is. But the flip side of that is someone else might have a completely different opinion on what that is. And if they don't agree, then your project's in trouble. And with something like Ninja Turtles, they may be disagreements about plot or bad guy or whatever, but there cannot and was never any disagreement about what Mikey is like and what he's into. Maybe there's some nuances that we've added that are original to this version of those characters, but in general, the dynamics, how they are, what they represent as personalities. So there's only so far that you can go astray, but in something that is more up to interpretation, you better hope that the people that are the decision makers agree with what you're doing, or else you're dead in the water.
Do the fans, do they find you? Have you gotten texts or direct messages from Turtle fans or Figment fans?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Encouraging, or are they?
Mostly
99% of the time. I don't think anyone's ever sent me like a "you blew it" text, but I
Check
have.
your phone.
Other than you two. But I have seen, obviously, you check the internet. You see there's always like some hater.
Oh, I check the internet.
I check the internet all the time. I check it right now. But in general, I would say like we've been really fortunate that the things that we've written have been really well received by the fandom. I was, we just did this Lego Star Wars thing, and you're always a little nervous when it's something as massive as Star Wars and sort of like that fosters such deep opinion, as Patrick can tell us. But the response was overwhelmingly positive.
Oh, sure.
From across all of the sort of pockets of fandom in Star Wars.
Even Patrick likes it.
Even Patrick was
I
liking
love it.
And that was the hard get.
It's hard to get Patrick to like a Star Wars.
It's true.
So
I'm a Trek guy.
Big Trek, huge Trek. So it has been very gratifying when people will reach out, or even unprompted when someone sometimes years later.
That's great.
Will be like, hey, I just watched this with my children and it was awesome. Thank you so much for that. Or in the case of something like Detective Pikachu, oh, this really was a movie we as a family watched during COVID and it really was helpful. Even projects like Addams Family 2, which
Hello?
How to put this politically, I think there's a lot of great things in it. I don't know if it's the most successful movie ultimately, but I've come to have a deeper appreciation for it because it is one of the movies that parents will tell me that they watch with their kids all the time and their kids love, and it's kind of changed my perspective on it.
That was my kid's introduction to the Addams Family. And he watched it 3 times the weekend it came out. Yeah.
But when I hear stories, well, first of all, that's great. But when he has great taste.
Oh, he hated it.
Well, he also. I mean, I agree.
Loved it.
No, but that's what I mean. It's like when you hear stories like that, you go, oh, well, who cares what the critics said?
Right.
I mean, it's like you care a little bit, but I've started to care less when I hear things like, "That's my kid's favorite movie," and you go, "Oh, well." That kind of makes everything worthwhile, and who cares what, some sort of highfalutin review had to say about, the Addams Family going on vacation.
Right. That said, though, the majority of your movies are insanely well received by the internet, which is so difficult.
We have been really fortunate in that respect, and I like to think it's me
more
than Benji.
Sure.
But and I think most people feel that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Benji. What do you think?
Yeah, when this movie got what, like a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Pretty good.
I was the 2%.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
You know,
Benji, what do you think you contributed to this movie that brought it down those 2%?
Well, you didn't see all the fan fiction on his computer.
Oh, sure.
He just got very distracted. Didn't give it his all because he was writing.
I was writing some side projects.
He was doing his side project fanfic about Ray Fillet.
How do you
And the
guys
pizza
write
shooter.
specifically? Like, do you guys write
Like,
together? Do you write scene by scene
we
separately?
type. We use the computer.
Oh my
Oh,
god, I'm
interesting.
just
So
Okay.
you know, there used to be a program called Word Perfect, but I don't use that anymore.
Okay.
What
Patrick is too young to know about
You
that.
don't
I
know
don't know what
Word
it is. I was
Perfect.
pretending like I did.
You don't even know. What do you know?
But do you write together? Do you write scenes separately and then talk to each other?
Most
What
of
is
the time,
yeah.
we will sit together. I mean, either
Because
in
you're also
person or
working
on
on 150
we're
things.
we're constantly, if we're not physically in the same room together, we are engaged in a text message.
Okay.
That is, drives our wives crazy because we don't stop talking to each
Sure.
other.
I will even go so far to say I think it drives Benji crazy because one of us is more needy than the other.
If I'm building Lego or something and not on my phone, and Dan will spiral out thinking I'm dead.
Sure.
That has happened more than once. And I'm like, I think Benji's dead.
And he's like, "Where were you? Are you okay? Do I need to call the police?" I was like, "I was just building a Lego set." Or Dan will like call my wife, being like, "Where's Benji?"
Oh my god.
But yeah, so we're always talking.
Yeah.
And when we're talking, like whenever we're writing something new, like we basically together throughout these discussions, we outline the story in like tremendous detail. We are big fans of the outline and knowing what we're doing and what the character arcs are, what the themes are, what the trajectory of the story is. And so we sort of are in agreement about that, and then that's when generally one of us goes off to start writing, and we'll send pages back and forth to each other and keep rewriting each other until we feel like it's ready to be shown to other people.
And usually our final step is the in-person side-by-side read-through of the entire script.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
wow.
go
So
through
fun.
it together.
Benji and I do a private read-through for ourselves and sometimes our assistant who is forced to watch these things.
Look at
But
that
She's
Mega
having
Mutant.
fun. She
That's a
likes it.
great toy, by the way.
this is a great
Yeah, I
toy.
loved it.
The Mega Mutant was one of the things that
So that's another thing. It's like, the toy is called the Mega Mutant and not Superfly
Duperfly.
because it was not in by the time the toys started getting made, Superfly creates this thing that is not himself, Superfly. So
that was a later.
it was a later development that was, brilliant, I think, on the part of Jeff and Seth and Evan to make that change because it just simplified it in a really nice way. But yeah, the toy was already in production.
I have to say, I think that Ice Cube is the best part of this movie.
He's so good in it.
I think Donatello and the kid who does Donatello is the best part.
Yeah, I think Donnie is the best. Is my sort of
Donnie
really stands out as a character, and I think he's so brilliant. I mean, they're
Ice
all
Cube,
brilliant.
Jackie Chan is great.
Jackie Chan is great,
Yeah.
but Ice Cube for me is the one that really gives a comedic performance that I didn't know he had in him. Like, I mean, he's funny, of course. He's funny in Friday, and he's funny in a lot of different things. He's even funny in Anaconda. But this is so, other than like Ghost of Mars, which, I don't know what your guys' feelings are Ghost of Mars. He hasn't really done a ton of like big genre
Sure.
stuff, and especially something that is as tonally specific as this and Ninja Turtles, and he just crushes it. And he actually has my favorite line in the entire movie that we didn't write, and I'm so mad that we didn't write it. It's coming up in a little bit when he says, "I don't need that horse."
Yeah.
It's so funny. He improv that, and I saw it on the test screening, and I was like, God, I wish I wrote that.
Did you go to all the test screenings?
Or it wasn't a test.
Or, no, it
screening.
wasn't a test screening. It was like a
screening of the rough cut.
the rough cut.
Yeah,
Did you go to
we
test
didn't
screenings
go to any.
We
test
didn't go to
screenings.
test screenings. Test screenings are weird
They're stressful.
and stressful and like not writer friendly.
How
would
long,
say.
How long did
Do
you
you
work
go to
on
your
it?
test screenings?
All of them. I have to. Yeah.
Oh
wow.
man, that
That
feels like
that
a
sounds
stressful
like it.
situation
Yeah.
that you would not like.
That sounds like it sucks.
I love it the day before because I'm like, I finally get to see it with an audience.
Yeah.
And I love watching it. with them, and then the minute people start talking about it, I don't want to be anywhere near it.
Right.
But I have to be.
Yeah.
They chain me to the theater.
How long did you work on this beginning to end?
I have not worked on it.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
The actual, so there was like a pre-period where we were sort of doing a punch on a previous iteration of the script that was about a couple months, and then
It's hard. I lose track of time because
I do lose
a lot
track
of
of
this
time.
happened during like peak pandemic. You know, like we were doing meetings like in Seth's
and having
backyard
to test
and
you know, it's
having
like a
doing
whole-
COVID tests and this and that and that whole time is such a weird.
It's a blur.
It's
Yeah.
hard to remember.
it was about a year and a half.
yeah, probably
Okay.
about a year and a half.
But the actual writing of the newest iteration of the script that did change subsequent to our involvement, but basically the foundation of this movie we wrote in about a month, which
Wow.
is a pretty short amount of time to
Yeah.
write something. But fortunately or unfortunately, we keep seeming to find ourselves in situations where that happens,
Well-
and we don't mind it, but it's kind of an intense way to work.
There's the horse. Ready?
Oh, it's coming.
Yep.
I don't need that horse. Oh gosh. Oh.
What was the first thing you guys wrote together not produced?
The first thing we wrote together that was not produced.
Yeah, like what was the
was
first thing?
a movie that we wrote.
That is still good, and
Oh.
if producers out there, if you
It was called The Harvard Zombie Massacre.
Wow.
It was a zombie comedy about a zombie invasion at Harvard.
Great.
and the catch was that these zombies were smarter than normal zombies because they went to
That's
Harvard.
great.
That's very funny.
So it was, our little tagline was America's most brilliant minds versus America's most brilliant zombies.
That's great.
and the pseudoscience behind it that we wrote into the script was like, he's used to doing advanced calculations, so like his brain has like resisted the zombie atrophy just
And so-
enough to be able to like open a door.
Right, the smart zombies
Great.
like were able to do small tasks like open doors and things like
That's
that.
fun.
Yeah.
And I think there was one that was like smarter than the others, which they did a little bit in Land of the Dead, if you recall that one, which wasn't like the best movie, but did have some really cool parts.
Yeah.
What do you think will be the last thing you write together?
Harvard Zombie Massacre
Harvard
2.
Zombie
Oh no,
Massacre
it's
2.
going to be your falling
That's
out.
it.
Yeah.
Oh no.
What
Guys,
was the
don't
first?
write it.
What was the first produced thing?
I mean, the first produced thing would
Was
be
our episode of
our
1600
episode of
Pen,
1600 Pen.
Okay.
which has the highest rating on IMDb. I'm sorry, John Lovett, but it does, and it is the best
Of
episode
anything ever, or
No.
of that show?
of anything ever.
Wow,
It's crazy.
amazing.
It's crazy.
Wow.
And then our first movie was Detective Pikachu.
Wow.
What an amazing first movie. Wow.
It was a pretty unlikely scenario to have occurred, but
Did you get Detective Pikachu because of 1600 Pen?
no.
I mean, through a series
sort of.
of events.
I mean, sort of
Sure.
like
You
kind
can-
of.
you can sort
I
of-
guess you could sort of draw a direct line to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that happened. The producers of Detective Pikachu, Mary Parent, Caleb Boyder, Ali Mendez, we were developing a different movie with them when they had a deal.
Which Josh Gad was going
at
to
Paramount,
star
which
in.
Josh was going to star in.
So he did, and he was the star of 1600 Pen. So Josh did bring us into that
And
project.
so we were making that movie with them, and then their deal ended at Paramount, and they went to Legendary, and we were very sad because what seemed like was going to be a go movie was
Yeah.
then fell apart. But then when they were at Legendary, they
Wow.
called us up and said, "Hey, you guys like Pokemon?"
One catch: you have 3 weeks to write the script,
and no balls.
and no Pokeballs,
no
and no
Pokeballs.
trainers, and no battles.
Wow.
So
Wow, 3 weeks is crazy.
3 weeks was a little cray.
Were you Pokemon guy? I mean, we could save this
I mean,
for another
Pokemon guy.
conversation, but
we didn't grow up with it because we're a little too
Yeah,
old for that.
yeah,
like
yeah.
Pokemon started when we were in high school,
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
like freshman year of high school was when I really
and-
remember it.
and so we weren't kids with it, but we were nerdy high schoolers. So we were,
Sure.
we weren't going out a lot,
yes.
so we knew Pokemon. We knew it. I would say, like on the scale of things, I would put it like at a 6 or a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
If
Right. Ninja Turtles was a 10 out of 10.
Ninja Turtles being a 10 out of 10, Star Wars being a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Hopefully someday Marvel or DC being a 10 out of 10.
Is that your other 10? I was going to ask.
That would be for me my other 10. Star Trek I think would also probably
Trying
fall
to think
in
what,
that
like when I was
category.
of the things I loved when I was a kid. Yeah, what's left? I guess Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters would be
one.
one we would enjoy.
Yeah.
For me right now, I got my eye on Marvel. I got my eye on DC. I got my eye on Star Trek. Those are kind of the big ones on the
that
block.
we need to IP whisper.
That we want to IP whisper.
Well, now
we want to whisper sweet nothings.
Here's a
Star
question
Trek,
kind of related to TMNT. TMNT obviously was a Daredevil parody to begin with.
Yes.
And then they changed it slightly to make it, so they're not writing in the Marvel Universe. Is there any IP that you're like, I would like to do that, but if I made it my own version of it because it wouldn't have to deal with the baggage of all the other stuff?
Patrick, great question.
Thank you so much. I wrote it down beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to create a new line of creatures like Pokemon.
Oh, sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think it's something that is sitting right there. I think that there's a lot of potential in kind of coming up with like what could this new line of creatures or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just feel like the world of creatures isn't completely explored, and to be able to really come up with something that kids would love and want to collect and play with.
Mm-hmm.
I have a collector's mindset to begin with, so I think some people might say, oh, well, that's like a sort of a crass commercial way to look at it, but I don't really look at it because I actually took a lot of satisfaction in collecting things, and I also, my parents were divorced when I was pretty young. I spent a lot of time by myself, so like collecting stuff was actually like a very kind of therapeutic and happy place for me. So I think it would be cool to create a line of new creatures that kids could get excited about and learn all the lore about. And
That's
I
great.
don't know exactly what they would be. If I did, I'd probably be a lot richer. But that's something that I have a little. I've got there's like a little voice in the back of my mind that I do kind of like. My passive processing power is sometimes turned toward that idea.
Benji, how about you?
That I'm a magician, so I would love to create something in the world of magic that is not Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something that we've played around with for a little while and still have not fully cracked yet. But that's what comes to mind. See, this is where we were gonna launch a pizza.
The pizza was originally the thing, which to be honest, I actually wish that is what happened, but I understand why it didn't happen.
Yeah, that was gonna be this little antidote thing was gonna be a topping on the pizza, and we were gonna pizza shoot it right into his mouth.
I do understand that the mechanics of them inventing a pizza shooter on the fly, perhaps.
Right.
Sure.
They did it once.
So, listen, Toy of the Year. I'll keep saying it to the high heavens. You think that whatever governing body awards the Toy of the Year just hands it out willy-nilly?
You guys might at least be nominated for that this year.
I want a Dark Falcon.
Yeah.
I think has a
Of
chance.
course.
Dark
It's got a
Falcon
shot.
is flying. That's our
But we don't get a trophy for Toy of the Year.
no, but
as
we just
writers.
take
No, but you get
personal
the toy.
But you get a
pride
toy.
to have
I
two
mean,
toys of the year.
I buy it myself. but-
Sure.
You did have to buy. That's right. I can say it.
Well, we eventually got some.
We got
Okay.
some free
ones,
stuff.
but the Dark Falcon being the new version of the Millennium Falcon from our Lego special, that is a really cool, evil version of the Millennium Falcon,
Which we will do eventually on this show.
hell yeah.
I was wondering why the Dark Falcon had a pizza launcher, and now
Because you asked about
It's in our-
recycling ideas.
It's in our- we didn't get
Now
it into this movie, so
we didn't get. We were like, it's fair game.
Now, this is Kevin Eastman, correct?
Yes,
I think so.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And one of the other people was Mr. Beast.
I was going to ask. That's
Oh,
another
wow.
question I had.
Mhm.
How does it feel to have written the first role that Mr. Beast played not as himself?
I mean, how
because
do you
that is
think-
true. I did look at his IMDb.
How do you think it feels?
I think it
Like,
probably feels pretty good.
neither here
Yeah.
nor there.
Yeah, no, it's Mr. Beast.
Question:
Was-
Who is Mr. Beast?
Mr. Beast.
You don't know Mr. Beast?
I think I'm old. Too
Mr.
old.
Beast is a gigantic
He's like
YouTuber.
the top YouTuber.
He's
Oh,
the
okay,
number
okay.
one
Yeah.
YouTuber.
more
um,
than Wet Movie 1.
I don't know what wet
It's
movie
just this
one.
kid that goes to movies in Burbank.
Oh, yeah.
That
no.
I think he's definitely
Even
one
bigger
of-
than him.
Shout out to Wet Movie.
Shout
He's
out
gonna be
Wet
so
Movies
excited
one.
about that.
Did you know Mr. Beast was going to be in it, or was that a
No,
surprise?
No,
that
I was surprised to us.
Just a very
But you
pleasant
recognize his
surprise.
voice
Great.
immediately upon hearing it.
I was like, that's the iconic voice of Mr. Beast.
The dulcet tones of Mr. Beast.
There's three voice actors I recognize instantly: Keith David, Patrick Stewart,
Mhm.
and Mr. Beast.
Is there a Mrs. Beast?
Of
Great
course.
question.
I'm just practicing what I'm going to say to him when I meet
If
him.
you listen, if you were Mr. Beast, you wouldn't have a Mrs. Beast.
Okay.
He's a young man. I don't know. I actually don't know anything about.
I don't know anything about Mr. Beast. This is fascinating.
I know too much about
I
Mr.
think
He's having
I've
some
seen-
troubles right now.
He is,
He
yeah.
has toys at Target. I've seen
He's got
that.
And hamburgers.
chocolate bars,
and
chocolate bar.
What a guy.
And now he's teaming up with Logan Paul to take on Lunchables.
which feels correct. Feels right.
That
is
sounds like an idea.
Finally.
real
Yeah.
story, Brian.
Finally.
Somebody on this couch is going to be called in to write that movie. We're going to be.
So it's a lunch. It's they're gonna fight Lunchables.
Do your kids love Lunchables? My kid loves Lunchables.
What's your take?
I don't. Yeah, my kids. I've not introduced them to Lunchables.
I'm not a good father. My kid has had them.
I was into Lunchables as a kid.
I liked them, but
Those Lunchables make your own pizza.
Oh,
I
sure.
liked
Yeah.
them, but I in my heart I always thought they weren't as good as they should have been.
That's true.
Well, that's why Mr. Beast is.
That's why Mr. Beast and Logan Paul are taking it to
He's filling a need.
Yeah,
time. Finally taking those
they're
people.
disrupting a
down.
whole industry.
It's time to take them down a peg.
How long do you think the cleanup took for this?
Patrick,
for
it's
the
not-
for
it's
the
real.
for the cleaning
This
crew.
is
Yeah.
just a cartoon. So it took no
The thing
time
that
at
you
all.
have to understand. Here's the thing that you must understand, Patrick, is
Yeah.
that this isn't real.
Oh, huh.
This is not a documentary. I know
Interesting.
it feels like one, but
Well, the idea for this podcast was always just to do documentaries. So now I'm a little
yeah,
confused.
we got to start over.
I think we should probably delete this.
Speaking of documentaries
Let's
and
put-
turtles, have you guys seen the turtle doc that ends with Eastman and Laird hanging out for the first time in years, and they draw together in the studio that they started everything in?
that's very emotional.
No,
you
I
haven't
haven't,
seen it?
but that
Oh,
sounds awesome.
It's wonderful. It's
Um,
on Paramount Plus.
That does sound
so
awesome.
so is this.
That's
Oh,
great.
Make it a double feature.
Hey,
Yeah.
stream this several hundred times.
Do you guys get money if it's
No,
Okay.
we sure
Because I
don't.
was going to say who your
We sure
agents-
don't, because of the wonderful rules of animation
Yeah.
writing. There are no residuals,
Mhm.
which is
I'm aware.
which you are, I'm sure, profoundly aware of, because
No, it's like we only have one live action movie in Detective Pikachu, and we still get residuals for that. And we're like, oh man, imagine if we got these for our other movies.
yeah, so we're trying to add a few more of those live actions just to even it out.
I was going to ask, is that by choice or is that just how things work? Or
Yes, writers all chose to not
no,
get
but
residuals.
no, that's not what I'm. Gosh, Benji's coming in hot
Patrick.
towards the end here. Benji's really turning on. Writing animated stuff versus live action stuff, has that been a conscious career thing, or that's just
Oh.
what gets greenlit, or what is?
I think Benji was saying earlier, or maybe it was just in my head, that because of Detective Pikachu, we were really
I did
fortunate.
not say
Okay,
that.
You said that on a meeting that we had
Yeah,
earlier
I said
today.
that at a meeting, but yeah, the Detective
What was the meeting
Pikachu.
about?
Just talking about
Never you mind what
other
the
cool
meeting is
movies,
about.
Great.
maybe some other big IP that they want us to whisper.
Yeah,
It's nothing. It's,
Um,
look, they need some
But
whispers.
essentially, Detective Pikachu being our breakthrough project, like because it was a hybrid movie, live action with animation, like it sort of opened doors in both the live action and animation worlds for us.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened, where for a while only animation was happening.
Which was really good news for us because we
Yes.
were having a lot of opportunities. My mom is a professor of computer animation, so
Wow.
unfortunately, I did not inherit her ability to draw or create art or visual art, but I've always loved it, and so it was always an area that we were super keen to get into. And so, because of Detective Pikachu, we were able to explore all this really cool animated stuff, but at the same time, our background is in live action
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and specifically comedy. So we always try to balance our projects. Thus far, the things that have been on a faster track have been the animated things.
Sure.
Some of the live action things have been a little bit more longer in gestation. So we're hopeful about some of our projects.
Yeah, we're hoping we can start shooting Spaceballs 2 in the not too
Yeah.
distant
That's
future.
that's sort of the one that's on deck right now that is trending in a really nice direction. But as
That's great.
is the case so often with movies, it's just you snap your fingers and something
Sure.
is dead,
Happens.
and
Mhm.
and so that you kind of have to guard your heart a little bit from that, and also have multiple paths to victory on different projects, because I think we have found when we have put our eggs.
Oh, wait.
Oh wait a minute, it's about to happen. I actually did forget what I was supposed to say.
Hey, that's me.
Hey, that's Benji.
That's me.
Oh.
Hey, that's me
Mm.
as well.
A conversation we were talking while it happened. Was there a conversation about how much she was going to throw up? Because
I'm sure there were conversations. We were not involved.
We were not
in those
privy to them. We just were like, she should throw up. Go do that, and then I think that they.
But
got
it is a lot of vomit.
It's a lot. It's a lot. But
and
you know what?
Some people were disturbed by that. But it's funny.
Yeah,
she's terrific as April. She was
is.
really
She's
great.
So great. Everyone in this movie is great, and
it's
it's
a
an
nice
insanely
cast.
Stacked cast.
It's a stacked cast.
Some people that you like forget are even in it, and you're like, oh yeah, that person is also in it.
I do sometimes think that if we ever have to give some kind of like keynote address and we have to write like a formal bio, this one is great because we can like include all the actors that we've written for, including Giancarlo Esposito.
That's great,
you know, and it's just like Jackie Chan, people that you'd never in a million years think that you...
Mr. Beast.
Mr. Beast, Ice Cube, so like I loved this one just because we Paul Rudd.
It's so funny. Introducing it so
that
funny.
That you actually do get... But yeah, we knocked off like a lot of really cool names
Malone,
on this one.
Yeah.
Post Malone, like... So that was a kind of a cool... Unfortunately, this movie came out during the SAG and WGA strikes, so there wasn't a premiere and we didn't get to meet any of these people. And the person I really wanted to meet, and probably the biggest surprise of this entire movie, is that it was scored by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which we didn't know until very late in the process.
Mm-hmm.
I was absolutely stunned. There they are.
There they are.
And I was really hoping to meet Trent Reznor, but then I was worried he'd be mean to me. But then I thought maybe that's the right interaction.
Right.
Maybe that's good.
Sure.
Well, Dan, we knew you wanted to meet him, and we have a big surprise.
Is it Trent? Trent?
No.
No. It's us.
All right. We're all gonna go listen to the Downward Spiral after this.
Isn't Trent doing the Tron soundtrack now? That's what.
He's 9 Inch Nails.
Oh,
is doing.
okay.
So,
So
which
it
is sort of
which
intriguing
is just
in that
Trent,
way.
but
which is all.
it's just Trent and Atticus are 9 Inch Nails,
Right.
Yeah.
But they're doing it under that name, which makes us think that it's going to sound much more like
Mm-hmm.
9 Inch Nails. Maybe it will have lyrics. I don't know.
Sure.
It's provocative.
Sure.
Some of these sequences were really interesting because some of them were from, like some of those like Donnie doing improv was actually from an earlier draft of the script, and that kind of got repurposed back into here. I'm glad that it made it in. If you look very carefully on her techno board, there's some interesting.
Oh, really?
Little Easter eggs for the folks.
So when there are post-credit scenes in your movie specifically, do you write them as a post-credit scene, or is this...
A lot of the time,
Yeah,
yes. In this case, yes.
So where do you put the end?
After the post-credits.
We put
After the post-credits.
after the
Okay.
post-credit.
Mhm.
So
because it's not the end until the
No,
that's
I know,
true.
yeah. How
What
do you break that up,
Run
though?
credits. And
Do
then,
you say like
I
credits
think we
roll
say
here?
fade to black
Okay.
after
Say-
the body and then
And then we
post-credit.
write in all caps post-credit scene.
I've never thought about that till right now. So
Post-credit.
I'm happy that you guys had an answer to it.
What is she up to?
There's the
Who's to
fly.
say?
There's the fly. Look at those glasses.
Jeff Goldblum
Who wears glasses
himself.
like that? Somebody does.
They got to call in some help.
But who could it be, though?
But who could
The
possibly...
kids from Stranger Things.
It's the kids from Stranger Things.
It's the Ghostbusters.
It's the Thundercats.
Oh yeah, that's Annie Potts from Ghostbusters, right?
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, he's a little spiky looking.
Guys, I'm just going to say it. That's the Shredder.
Dude, you got it.
You figured
You
it
figured
out.
it out.
Now we do have to talk all the way through these credits.
All right.
No,
That's
we
fine.
don't
I
get to
expected
talk.
nothing.
Get
Yeah.
to talk through these.
Hey,
Here we go.
Mr. Beast,
Time-
Mr.
There,
Beast.
Mr. Beast credited as
Very
Mr.
good.
Beast. No space.
Wait, David Faustino is normal Nate?
He's normal Nate.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Bud Bunny.
You could have met him at the premiere, too.
If only.
You could have met.
Woodrow White.
Yeah,
We've
we
met
know
Woodrow
each
Wright
other.
many times.
Could have met Daniel Kahn.
He's super talented.
You could have met the IT manager Jesse Tushinsky.
The best of his.
Now is the time to badmouth post-viz artist Rock Wan Huang.
I
if
would
you want
never,
to. Okay.
ever do
No.
that.
I knew you had a problem with him right
The
before we started
post-viz is
recording.
great in this.
Just him specifically.
They're great. There's the best in the biz. We only work
With the best.
With
of
the
With the
best set
best.
modeling leads.
yes.
with the best set servicing.
Uh-huh.
Number one.
I'm sure this is everyone's favorite part of this podcast.
Well, we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Where
We're
we
all
wind
reading
down.
it.
We're
You know?
winding down.
Anything you guys want to say?
What
in
have we
conclusion?
learned? What have we learned?
Where are the gotcha questions?
What do you want the gotcha question to be?
Well, it wouldn't be a gotcha if
Do you have a gotcha question for Dan? And Dan, do you have a gotcha question
Oh
for
my
Benji?
gosh. Tables are turned.
What's the question where you're like, I shouldn't ask him this?
I just want to know why he doesn't respond to my texts at night. It's like
sometimes I got Lego to build. Sometimes I got.
But I know he's here.
I got magic tricks to work on.
But the thing is, I know he's got a watch.
For the listeners at home, Benji will not do a magic trick for us.
I asked him twice.
He will. He's being coy.
He made my boredom disappear today.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
He's giving you a magical experience.
This is magic.
Dan, what's your Lego? While Benji's doing Lego, other than texting Benji, what do you like to do?
Dan's hobby is texting.
My hobby is texting Benji and wondering why he's ignoring me.
It was funny if yours was Duplo.
Dan
just love Duplo.
Blocks.
Mega
Dan
blocks.
likes
Lincoln
collecting
logs.
his comics and
comics,
bagging them and organizing them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and spending an insane amount. You have a ton of great.
Well, for my wife who might be listening, that sounds like a big overstatement. A lot.
I said spending a ton of time.
A ton of time. Oh, yes, a ton of time.
Yeah.
A ton of time. Yes.
Dan, if she's listened this far, good for her.
There's no
There's a 0% chance.
She
doesn't even know what I do. She would never find this. Megan, if you're listening to this,
stop.
What? You have better things to do.
All right, now that she's stopped, Dan has spent so much money.
Now
on
that
comics.
she's
It's
not listening,
insane, right? It's scary.
I have,
You made me buy an expensive comic because I wanted to see what I was missing out on.
And didn't it feel good?
No, I was nothing. I just looked at it like, now what?
Well, that's what you do. You look at it and you feel a deep sense of
Dan puts them up
satisfaction.
on the highest shelf, and he just smiles at them every day.
Every time I walk into my office, I go,
I like toys. I think
got
that's
that.
what it is.
Well,
for me.
toys are good. I like toys too,
Yeah.
but I was told under duress, no more toys.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I was warned.
Toys take up more space.
Toys take up more space.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I have my two racks of comics, I have 4 areas. I have rack 1, rack 2, then one tier up from that are on a shelf the ungraded sort of higher value comics, and then one tier up from that on the highest shelf are the graded comics that would be a disaster if my children ever.
But like Brian, how do you decide which Minions toys to buy? There are so many now.
Oh, I don't buy them.
He gets them given to him.
No, I don't. Patrick, you've been in my house. I don't have them. I don't. I always wanted one of every toy of everything I worked on, and then I started working on Minions, and my wife started working on Star Wars, and I was like, nope. Never mind. I can't.
Yeah,
it's impossible.
We started with that on Ninja Turtles, and even on this, it was like, all right. Well,
I have all the toys.
The house is bright yellow, though.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
that's the big one eye.
Pokemon was also challenging to get all this, all the stuff. So
sure. I have all of. I have more of your movies toys than mine.
Well, that sounds right.
Yeah.
That's money not in that's money not in my pocket. The other thing I like to do is I used to like to play video games, but then I had kids, and unfortunately
they like watching Smash Brothers.
Well,
right?
no, I have slowly but surely introduced them to Mario Party.
Oh, that's great.
And I think it's the graft is taking. And I think that they are going to continue to want to do Mario Party. So that was a good sort of I don't know.
Is there a video game that you guys would want to do as a movie?
Oh, there's a ton.
What popped in your head first when I said it?
I would love to do Portal.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Portal. I would do maybe a combination of Portal 1 and Portal 2.
Which Portal? It feels inevitable. That movie.
There have been attempts. I think that the internal politics of
the
Portalverse are complex, but that would be one I would really like to do. There have been others that we have talked about, but they just never quite have come to fruition. But it's an area. BioShock is another one that I think that someone will eventually crack. But
okay, bye everyone.
Bye. All right, later.
Bye. Good movie.
Great.
A great movie. Dan and Benji are very good storytellers, very good at what they do, and are just two interesting guys that I think will be working a lot in this industry for a very long time, because they know how to make everything work for them, and they know how to play the game of Hollywood.
I think they also know when they get a franchise or a certain IP, they really talk to each other about what excites them about it and what they like as fans, and they are fans of a lot of different things. So it's fun to see them get to do it.
I also think they're very good at, and this is something I would say to their face, they're very good at not doing fan servicey stuff,
right?
But doing the things that people like about those IP.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things are not necessarily the same thing.
That's right.
They're not repeating the beats,
Right.
And that is important, I think, in a lot of projects that are coming out now, because a lot of new IP reboots or whatever.
Greatest hits.
It's greatest hits,
right.
And that's not as exciting to someone just being like, well, this is the feeling of what I like, but they're doing new stuff.
It has to work on a level that if you've never seen anything with these characters, you still love it. And Mutant Mayhem certainly does. Did this make you want to learn anything more about the Turtles, read books, or...
Yes, it did make me want to go read the comics.
Right.
Like the original run of comics.
Or the ones that I wrote. Why don't you do that?
Sure.
Come on,
What
man.
is your favorite thing that you added to Turtles lore?
Oh, man. Well, easily. There was a character named Alapex who was a mutant, and I put her in it, and she became a villain and became the girlfriend of Raphael.
Wow.
And they made a toy of her, and they put her in the animated show. And that's
pretty
one
cool.
that I had to ask, like, can I put this, I created, is that okay? And she's in there.
Wow.
Kevin Eastman created the look of her.
Wow.
He's the creator, the co-creator of the Ninja Turtles. That was amazing. And I also brought in Bebop and Rocksteady into the current continuity.
Cool.
Where they weren't going to be in there.
Yeah.
Or they weren't going to be in there as soon as I put them in.
Sure.
So yeah, I was proud of that. I just love writing them. I love writing those characters. And I was super jealous when Dan and Benji said they were doing this movie, but it is exactly the movie it should be.
Yeah.
And it was
I
so
agree.
great.
Well, we hope you enjoyed it. And we've got a cool one coming up next week, too. We're very excited for that one.
Cameron Crowe.
It's Cameron Crowe. It's not Cameron Crowe.
It's never going to be Cameron Crowe.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks for listening to Hey That's Me, a commentary podcast. This has been a That Was Just So Funny production. Your hosts have been Patrick Ottner and Brian Lynch. You can find out more about the show at HeyThat'sMePod.com or on social media at HeyThat'sMePod. Check out our Patreon at patreon.com/commentary, where you can find out about guests early, submit questions for us to ask on the show, or even do a commentary to your own favorite movie with me. Our music was by Alex Peabody, and our art was by Abigail Noy. Special thanks to Annalise Nelson and Mark David Christensen. Be sure to leave us a review on iTunes or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Please, tell your friends about this show.